Um, but before that starts, I will be meeting with the student group multiple times to give them an overview of what to pack, a kind of orientation to Quito and Ecuador, safety information and all that stuff. So that stuff happens more or less before the start of the 10th, but we might do some of it during that first week as well. And the purpose of those first few days on campus is to do a bit of the ecology instruction. We're going to be using a textbook called, A Neotropical Companion by John Cricker. And we'll be reading probably 3/4 of the book to go over rainforest ecology. And that gives us a basis to start with. And then on July 15th, which is a Sunday, we will be flying, I think, or maybe that's a Saturday, flying to Quito, the capital. And from Quito, we will travel pretty much most of the rest of the trip. And the whole thing for everything is going to run about $4,500, and that includes your airfare, your accommodations, your transportation, and the 3 units of registration for the course. So, and the course is going to cover lowland tropical ecology, but it's also going to cover what's known as cloud forest ecology. And we're also going to look at topics about rainforest development, like oil development and mining. Excuse me. So we're going to be based here in Quito as we land. That's the capital of Ecuador. And it's a big city. It's several million people. It's right up in the middle of the Andes Mountains. So it's at a pretty high elevation, about 8,500 feet elevation. And it has a long history, of course. It has a pre-colonial history of indigenous peoples and cultures living in this area for a long time, the Incas and other folks like the Incas. And then, of course, the Spanish colonized the country, and so they have a large European descendants population who is the dominant population in the country, and they've established their systems of government, and we'll look at that. We'll visit the presidential palace or Independence Square and things of that nature. But it's a modern city. I mean, it has all of the things you would expect from a large metropolitan city, as well as some of that ancient antiquities. This is one of the oldest churches in Latin America, as a matter of fact. If we get lucky, we'll also get to take a short trip just outside of Quito to visit either some archaeological sites, or they have this sort of an area, what they call the Mitad del Mundo, which is the equator. And there's a little museum exhibit there that we might be able to see. We'll be staying in Quito in a place called Posada del Maple, which is a small, affordable hostel. And it's on a nice, quiet street in a section of town, which is a little bit more modern than the other places. And it's a simple place, just beds and shared bathrooms in the hallways. But it's comfortable and quiet and affordable. It has a nice common space. They service breakfast. It also has internet access, so everybody can contact their loved ones as soon as they arrive. And our first trip is going to be from Quito to the north to a place called the Intag River Valley, where we're going to visit a reserve known as the Intag Cloud Forest Reserve. And to get there, we'll take a bus, probably one bus to Otavalo, which is about 2 hours, and then another bus from Otavalo to the Intag Cloud Forest Reserve. But we'll probably have lunch in Otavalo on the way. And this is a nice area because it's pretty remote as far as the cloud forests go, and it's protected space, and it gives us a chance to visit a kind of forest ecosystem which is the result of high moisture content in a mountainous region. The cloud forest tends to be a lot steeper sloped, different kinds of uh, biodiversity than you would find in the lowland rainforest, but equally interesting. Not as many large terrestrial mammals, for example, but it has beautiful flowers and birds and insects, and we'll see a lot of those. Orchids tend to be pretty rampant in this area. And it also happens to be the destination that we are visiting is an organic farm run by this man here named Carlos. He's a Cuban American expat who now lives in Ecuador. And he grows all kinds of fresh fruits and vegetables, and we eat everything from his farm. It's a beautiful region of mixture of farmland and forest, and protected forest. And from his area, we'll take walks along the edges of the forest, and we'll have some interpretation by sometimes Carlos and sometimes this local guy named Roberto. And they'll point some things out about the rainforest ecology, which will supplement the same readings and material that we've been already learning at that point. And this is also an area where we'll find, this mixture of forest and farming. There's a lot of waterfalls and creeks and beautiful things to see. This is a sample of their organic food. And it's also a chance for us to see some wildlife. I mean, you can set up something called a insect sheet, which is where you shine a white light behind a white sheet and it attracts all the insects. And on one of those, we'll have a chance to see this incredible diversity of moths. They also grow a lot of coffee there. So we'll have a chance to learn about the coffee production process and how they can raise coffee while also protecting a lot of the other forest in the region. His neighbor will tell us a little bit about nutrient cycling and what she does on her farm to compost. And we'll also learn a little bit about some of the threats to this region. This is an area where not too far from those farms, they're building a new copper mine, which is being funded by some Chileans and also the Ecuadorian government. And some of the community members have tried to stop and block that mine from production. And it's gone through a pretty dramatic story. And we're going to learn and hear about that story. And we'll also be visited by some of those community members to hear it from them firsthand in their efforts to resist the mine. One of those efforts involves creating their own crafts. And so there's a women's craft cooperative that has emerged, and they're using local resources to form these weavings and make bags and placemats and other kinds of things, which will be available for purchase. And so after that, that'll be about 3 days at the Intag Cloud Forest Reserve. And then we will go back the same way we came to Otavalo. But in this case, we'll stop in Otavalo and have 2 nights there for a little rest and relaxation. This is an area with the biggest crafts market pretty much in Ecuador, and it's internationally known. And the Saturday market is usually very full and packed, and this would be the place for folks to try and get a couple of gifts for their loved ones or friends or whoever. And yeah, it's sort of like shopping, or you can spend some time to relax, but also nearby, if you wanted to, you could see a very old hacienda from the colonial times, and then was taken over by some of the revolutionaries. In fact, the liberator of South America, Simón Bolivar, stayed at a place not too far from there called Hosteria Pinzaqui. Anyway, you can see that, or there's also a lake, which isn't far from Otavalo. If you go into, so people might be able to do that, take hikes to the nearby Quicocha Lake, or go to the market, or see that hacienda. There's also a chance to possibly see some weavers. But that's just really some downtime before we spend and travel to our primary destinations, which are in the lowland rainforest. So from Otavalo, we will take another bus back to Quito, which would be a 2-hour bus ride, and then get on a plane and fly to the frontier town of Coca, also known as Francisco de Orellana. This is a lowland town right in the middle of a confluence of a couple of rivers, which eventually, much further downstream, will feed into the Amazon River and eventually flow out the Atlantic. But Coca is an industrial frontier town that's mixed with mainly oil production and farming, agriculture. So we'll fly to Coca and we'll have one night there. But that afternoon, if everything goes right, we'll get a chance to learn about and see some of the facilities where they're drilling for oil. This is an activity which is happening now, but it's also an activity that happened many years in the past. And when it did happen in the past, they left behind an ugly wasteland of toxic sludge. They built a bunch of swimming pools, holes in the ground, basically, and put all this waste crude in it. So that's a terrible legacy of pollution, which has led to a lot of conflicts. And a couple of gentlemen, along with the help of some other Americans, have been trying to fight this because the main company that was involved was Texaco. And after Texaco was bought by Chevron in a merger, then now Chevron is the one that's on the other side of the defense. These two gentlemen were involved in that, and we'll learn a little bit about their story and their organization called Frente, and the kinds of work that they did to facilitate grassroots organizing to try and fight that history of contamination. So hopefully we'll have a chance to see some of these facilities. We've done it twice in the past, and it's just nothing like seeing it firsthand after learning about it. You can find places where you can just dig in a shovel in the ground and pull out the waste crude and see for yourself how contaminated it is. It's important to see that before you go into the main rainforest region so that you have an idea of what the real threats are. And eventually, after we do that, the next day we'll travel to the Tiputini Biodiversity Station. And from Coca, it's about 8 hours altogether if you count for waiting time and stoppages and so forth. But it's a boat and then a truck and then another boat. And the truck will take us through an operating oil concession, but the destination is the remote Tiputini Biodiversity Station, and this is probably the most biodiverse place on the planet. And if you want to take the number of species per unit of land and count up the diversity, this is where it's found. And so this is the place to really learn about rainforest ecology and see it. And it's a comfortable place. It's a mixture of a cafeteria-style building, a laboratory, and then dorms. It was a project that was jointly conceived by a professor named Kelly Swing, who is also an American expat, but has now basically lived in Ecuador longer than he has in the United States. He's got an Ecuadorian family and wife and that whole thing. And two universities, Boston University and the University San Francisco de Quito. And so they created this research station for the joint objective of research and education and conservation. So it's not an operating tourist facility, and it's not designed for that purpose, and they don't really cater to tourists. Instead, they cater to university groups or educational groups. And these are the dorms where students stay. They're bunk beds, screened-in buildings, very simple, rustic, running water and showers inside each room. So you have everything you need there, and then we gather for meals and lessons in the main laboratory building or the cafeteria. But you can be comfortable in these buildings and not really worry about critters or anything. There are lots of trails that the station has established over the years, miles really of trails. And so our primary activity will be walking the trails with an interpretive guide. And we'll also take advantage of the different kinds of subsystems that exist within this overall research station. But the guides are better than anybody else, really, in pointing out plant diversity, different kinds of plant characteristics, as well as insect and bird diversity and mammal sightings. And so we will always be walking with a guide. And you have to be prepared. I mean, some of the kinds of experiences that are in this area are, unpredictable. You could have a lot of heavy rainfall and some flooding, and we'll be walking through mud or slipping on mud, or through flooded bridges and so forth. It's a rainforest. It's the real thing. This facility also is equipped with several other things that make it particularly exciting. One of them is a canopy walkway and also an observation tower. A canopy walkway is a series of suspension bridges. You climb up a ladder, like a multiple story ladder with the harness, and you're roped in, and then you clip in on the top, and you can walk between trees on the suspension bridges on the canopy walkway, from one tree to the next tree to the next tree. It's about 4 or 5 trees altogether. And that's one way to see the canopy, which is a part of the forest which has its own characteristics and different domination of wildlife, and sometimes plant diversity that you would find there than you might find down at the understory or at the forest floor level. And you see things that you might not see down there. Insects, some kinds of plants. These are called bromeliads. They look a lot like pineapple, and they're related to pineapple. Sometimes your larger primates and monkeys are up in the canopy. Most of the time, in fact, they are in the canopy. It's a question of whether you see them. And this is one visit that students and I had where it just dumped rain on us up there. I mean, we got soaked, but it was pretty awesome. And then the observation tower, which is, as you can see, a metal or steel scaffolding, which is around a large tree. And the purpose of that is you walk up just like you would in the canopy walkway to get a chance to see the canopy from above and look out across the landscape, see bird diversity, see some of the plant diversity, and so forth. Sometimes we'll have this piece of equipment called a scope, which is a lot like a super-powered single lens binocular. So that's one of the great assets, is to have that canopy walkway and the observation tower at the station. Of course, we're here to learn as well, so we're going to be doing some field studies and taking some rudimentary measurements. It's a very introductory level ecology class, but it's important to try that, to try and do measurements, to try and take advantage of the fact that you're there and you can do some research. We will also have a chance to see a difference of wildlife and, again, vegetation on the river. We'll probably take a number of float trips up and down the river, observing birds, looking for reptiles, and we will see that, and sometimes maybe even fishing, just to get a sense of, again, the full diversity that this whole forest has to offer. We might get wet, we might go netting for fish, as what you can see they're doing here, and trying to catalog the different varieties of fish that we can find in those nets. Maybe people could fish individually, which you can do right from the docks near the main cafeteria. But yeah, it's a chance to see things that to get up close and personal with some of the wildlife, and then also to stay away or see things that maybe you wouldn't want to get so close to, such as these caiman, and they're pretty awesome. There are a couple of other things we'll be able to do at this site. One is, I don't have the slides to show you, but they have a lake, a small lake on their property. And that is, again, an amazing little microsystem where you can see a different variety of birds and animals. And we can take a canoe around the lake and again, make more observations about what we see. And we can also do night hikes or night walks. which the forest completely changes at night, and it turns into, again, a different collection of animals and birds and a lot of reptiles and amphibians, and insects that you wouldn't see normally during the day come out at night. And so we don't go very far. We just, a couple hundred meters away from the main buildings, but it's really awesome to take these walks at night and see things differently. Of course, there'll be lectures, and I will be, leading some discussions and also coaching the students in their different kinds of assignments that are going to be part of the course. But they have a whiteboard. They might have some video available for us. It's not clear if those are going to be working or not, but the overall requirements for the class include an exam, some short writing assignments, a practical field quiz after we take a number of walks. Then I might ask you to do some observations or point some things out or tell me the names of different things. There will be a coordinated field study, an essay, and then a couple of presentations. Some of the presentations you will do in the forest itself, and one of them you will do after we return back to the United States. So the question you want to ask yourself is, are you ready for an adventure? This is going to be a life-changing experience. It's going to be something like you've never done before. And it will probably ask you to take you out of your comfort zone. Can you handle those things? Can you handle cold showers and sometimes waiting for minutes, if not hours, for a bus or for something that just didn't go right? Do you have a phobia of something that we should know about? But it's an awesome experience. It definitely will be something you'll never forget. And it's something that we have to do soon because this forest is rapidly disappearing. So that's about all I have to say about the course. You'll earn 3 units of academic credit. This course will also satisfy certain university requirements. It's certified for the upper division science requirement. It also meets the what are called the undergraduate upper division SF state studies requirements for environmental sustainability and global perspectives. And the price of about $4,500 will include everything from your airfare to your accommodations, your food, and your transportation, all of that stuff within Ecuador, as well as the 3 units of summer school registration. So if you're interested, then please be in touch and continue to be in touch. And the next steps are to complete an essay and to submit that essay with your transcripts, like an unofficial transcript. And if you have it already, please send me a color photocopy of your passport page. But if you don't have that, then you need to apply for one of those right away and then send me the verification that you've submitted that application for the passport. There's other requirements that you're going to need for health reasons, like vaccinations for yellow fever. It's recommended for typhoid vaccination, which is an oral pill that you can take. Those kinds of questions you'll have with your doctor beforehand. But yes, the yellow fever vaccination is definitely required. Yeah, so that's about it. And I can stop here and leave, ask if you have any questions or